Hey there. Welcome to Life Design Plus, where we are mastering the art of living your authentic life. I'm excited to introduce you to my friend John Paik today. Now, John comes to the show via Grace Nikae. Now, Grace was a guest a few episodes ago, and on that episode, I asked her if she had anybody she thought would be a great guest for the show. She introduced me to John. We had an awesome conversation offline, and here we are having a great conversation about his time spent at Nike, which obviously I'm interested in as a big Nike and Jordan fan. But more importantly, we talk about topics that are more impactful to your journey, to your pursuit of your authentic life. Topics like leadership, networking, personal branding. And yes, you have a personal brand. I could have talked to John about branding, and we get into the Anthony Edwards shoe at the very end of the episode. I could have done a whole hour just talking about that, but that's not what's most important for you and your journey. So I'm thankful that John shared a lot of his expertise and his wisdom from his journey at Nike to being a consultant to being a leader, and what he wants his legacy to be is basically being a leader who's there, that served others and helped others. Now, a couple of things I wrote down I want you to make sure you pay attention to. As a marketer, as a branding person, John drops the 5 C's and the 3 R's. And what I mean by that is marketers always have these numbers and letters, so putting these things together. I'm not good at doing those, but John has 2 of those. I want you to pay attention to those, and also pay attention to some of the things he talks about when it comes to branding and personal branding in particular. All right, that's enough of me. Let's get to this great conversation with my friend, John Paik. What your favorite pair of Nikes are. And this will make more sense as we get further into the episode. The intro, I talked about your time at Nike briefly, but like as a sneakerhead myself, and I know you have a huge collection from the last time we talked, let's kick it off with what your favorite shoe is, and then we'll get to why this matters and how this plays in.
Oh man, where do I start? I got a good list, but I would say the most, well, let me rank them. I think that's easier. I can't say I have a favorite shoe because each shoe has a meaning to me and just the comfort level, the innovation style, the look and feel. But I think the most shoe that I absolutely wear all the time is the Air Maxes.
Mm-hmm.
Just regular Air Maxes, clean, comfortable. The purpose of the Air Maxes was originally running, but now it's really focused on, style and look and feel. Two would have to be the AJ3s. I mean, that has something meaningful for me as a young kid. The 2 favorite players that I had as a young kid was, of course, Michael Jordan
Mm-hmm.
and then Clyde Drexler, which he wasn't a Nike athlete. He was an Avia athlete. And then Kobe's right there. Third best shoe that I really love are the Stefan Janowski's, the Nike SB shoes. They're just clean as well, vulcanized, and they have something meaning to me. And then my fourth favorite definitely would be the Hirachis. Just they look really sleek, and I don't know, they each have something for me and
Mm-hmm.
meaning. As I talk to other sneakerheads or other people are like, oh, those are 6 shoes. I'm always like, oh, what do you know about them, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, let me hear your insights as well, just as much as I can give you some insight. So I would say that's the ranking of the top 4, but I couldn't say there's a favorite for me right now.
That's fair. And I love how like there's meaning to the shoe beyond just like the design and other things. There's things that you appreciate that maybe I would miss out on, and probably vice versa if I were to list my favorite shoes. So I appreciate you taking me down that road and sharing those favorite shoes with us. Which that kind of leads me to, why I led with the shoe and talking about Nike. And one of the things that I thought was really interesting and empowering was when we first spoke, and I have to shout out Grace for getting us connected. You talked about how you got to Nike, and I won't say that it was luck, but there was a little bit of luck that you kind of created for yourself. Can you kind of share that story of how you got to Nike? Because I think that it can be something that somebody, it may not be somebody going to Nike, but somebody out there is going to hear how you were able to kind of take this opportunity and run with it and kind of take you down this path. So can you kind of give that story of how Nike came to be in your life?
Far back, I can remember as a kid, I always wore Nikes, but the way it kind of happened was right out of school, I was actually working for a basketball team in Seattle, the Sonics, and worked my way up, right, from sales to group development, etc. And one of my mentors at the time, and we had a great relationship, was an assistant GM at the time at the Sonics. And he's still affiliated with the NBA. I won't mention his name just for privacy issues, but he kind of took me under his wing, showed me the ropes inside the facilities of like where the players play, what they do, what they call the war room, etc. And during my first year, we traded a major player for another player at that time, and the fans were livid. You can only imagine. Seattle fans are very passionate, but during that time, I got to kind of connect and build a relationship with this athlete, and he was a Jordan Brand athlete. And at the time, the team was on the verge of being sold, and the rumors had it at the time that the team was going to move to Oklahoma City. And for me, I'm a I love the West Coast. Nothing wrong, where people live in the world or the regions, but I unfortunately was not planning to move to Oklahoma. And so I spoke to a few people, and I had this opportunity with this athlete, and he mentioned, "Do you know Howard White?" And at the time, as a young kid, I had no idea. H is a really amazing person. But he had mentioned you should just shoot him an email and see what happens, just out cold, right? And I was like, okay, I mean, if you don't ask, you won't know, right? And so I had the opportunity to just get his email, shoot him a note, and was like, hey, do you have 30 minutes to just, meet myself, introduce myself, and pick your brain, right? And I had no expectations for him to reply back. Crazy enough, he replied back. And he's like, yeah, let's schedule a coffee meeting for 30 minutes. And that was kind of the start of my career at Nike because I met him. He was very transparent and very kind, and I still have a great relationship with him today. But H was just like, we don't have anything, but something might come up. So just be aware. And so I kid you not, probably 2 weeks later, I get a phone call from a recruiter, and she was like, hey, would you be interested in a contractual position, a part-time contractual position? I was like, I'm in, no matter what it is. We're already in the verge of moving back to Portland. And that's how I kind of started my career at Nike, and then being able to network within there, build relationships, have the opportunity to really just learn, ask a lot of questions, and just be able to understand the business. And that's kind of how it all started and accumulated my career at Nike, from being in, action sports, specifically, what we had at the time, Nike 6.0, as well as SB, and then moving towards the Olympic side of the business to sportswear and Nike basketball, all cultivated my career there, and so that's how the journey began.
And I love the cold email because I've done a lot of cold emailing in my days, and a lot of them have fallen on deaf ears. At least I don't even know if they really got them. But to your point, I wrote down you don't know if you don't ask. And how simple is it to send a cold email or send a cold DM on Twitter or LinkedIn or whatever it might be, just to see if the chances are you might get the person at a time that they are feeling generous or in a good mood, and they might just sit down and have coffee with you and drastically change your life. And in the worst case scenario, you send that email, you hear nothing, nothing's changed. You're no worse off by sending that email. So that was the part of the story I really wanted to hit on. We didn't have to talk about the fact that it was Howard, because for a lot of people, they may not know who he is. But like the fact that that was your way in, and then you had the willingness to be open to whatever comes my way, I'm going to take it. I just need to get in, and then I'll figure things out from there. Do you remember how you felt about taking the opportunity that came? Like, were you have any reservations, or did you just not care? You just wanted to be in there?
I think because of how powerful the brand is,
Mm-hmm.
Nike in general, great storytelling, great products. Even back when before I worked there as a kid, as a avid fan of the swoosh, I think for me mentally, it didn't matter. I knew that whatever position I'm going to have the opportunity to be in, it wasn't going to be glamorous for, by no means, but it gave me the opportunity. I had the mentality of like, I need to learn everything I can, because that's going to give me the advantage to realistically connect with people from different functions, executives, build great relationships, understand what they're looking for, what they do, and just really have that growth mindset of like, everything that you touch, do meetings or being able to shadow someone, whatever that may be, I'm gonna soak it all in. And the best part is, oh, you also get to speak to not just the athletes but the consumers as well and learn from them because Nike to this day, it's still the voice of the athlete, but it's kind of, I would say, transition to it's the voice of the consumer who is the athlete,
Hmm.
right? And so, um, to your question, I had the mentality of no matter what, I'm just going to get in and learn and see where it leads me to. And I was fortunate enough to have amazing mentors to be able to build relationships and get to where I wanted to go during my career there.
I want to get some of your insight on networking. How did you go about networking? Because I think that's a skill that a lot of people underappreciate how valuable that can be. And I think there's good and bad ways to do it. But before we get to networking, I'm curious to know, like, you had to go into that situation knowing that I'm going to do all the things I need to do. I'm going to learn it with confidence that you're going to be able to turn it into something that you really want it to be. Where did you develop that confidence? How did you have that to go into that situation with all that unknown?
Yeah, I think for me as an athlete myself, playing a lot of sports as a kid, being able to, I would say, just be on basketball teams, soccer teams, playing tennis as well. It just gave me an opportunity to really develop skills to learn quickly, right? Be a great listener, be a better teammate, be able to tell, my teammates if they screwed up on something, it's okay, right? Not to yell at them, and I think that also leads into having great coaches. For me, it's confidence, I would say, is something that's I'm still developing to this day, but it's how I speak to myself and the mentality that I put into myself. Um, being able to really look at things holistically and being able to use powerful, positive words to really get to where I want to get to and learn. But yeah, I think for leadership, I'm still learning to this day, but it's really focused on what I've done in my career and its growth, like just learning every day. I mean, again, back to the topic of cold emailing, man, I got a lot of
Mhm.
no's. I mean, people don't realize how many no's I got or like ghosting that I got, but I kept going and doing it. And I think persistency is key. There's a art, I would say there's an art and science to persistency versus like being annoying. But I would say it just gave me that kind of trial and error to continue developing who I am and how I want to negotiate or continue to speak with other people as I move forward.
And as you dealt with other people moving forward, you mentioned networking throughout Nike and obviously through the profession was valuable to you. What was your approach to networking? You said there's an art to persistency. I think there's an art to networking as well. And I was never taught it. I stumbled into it. I think I've done a good job just accidentally networking. Like my network, especially within financial services where I've spent all my career, is really, really strong, but it wasn't intentional. It sounds like you may have been more intentional going into it. So, what was your approach to networking? So, people who aren't thinking about the value of building their network out can maybe learn a little bit from what you were able to do.
Yeah, so networking, I would say specifically for myself, I've always been taught it's not art and science, right? Science is in the art just as much as art is in the science, right? And that's no matter what we do, from marketing to logistics to finances to networking. And the way I went about it is I learned the hard way. First, when you network, as I would say, as a young kid in the profession, I always thought about myself, meaning like, oh, I'm gonna right off the bat, I want a job to work for this person, and I'm just gonna move and ask, right?
Hmm.
But it wasn't really focused on building that relationship at first, and that's what I learned quickly. Because when you build relationships, it's actually getting to know the person,
Hmm.
like what's their background, what do they like, what do they dislike. It's almost like when you're doing a marketing research, right, from understanding consumers, you got to ask questions to understand what they want and who they are, right? And that's the same as relationships and how I go about it because it's not a one and done deal. I really want to genuinely get to know whom they
Hmm.
are, what kind of commonalities that we have, and then be able to really build a friendship and continue gaining that. So when I meet with people, it's not right off the bat, here's what I want. It's like, oh, that's amazing. I love your background. I love whom you are. Love the connections and similarities that we do have. I do have a few more questions on what your thoughts are on these specific topics. And then being like, hey, I'd love to continue speaking with you. Could we do a cadence of every quarter, every other month, whatever that may be? But the first meeting that I do, I know it's the most important touch point. I will never ask right off the bat how it can benefit me, because it doesn't. It's going to be the question that you need to ask yourself is, how is it going to benefit both of you as you build this relationship? And then as you continue building that relationship, it's at that point you're going to have an opportunity to be like, since we have this friendship now, I can ask you this maybe favor or question that at first, if you ever met me, it would have been a no. So that's how I go about, for me, relationships, because it's genuine. And I know that word has been used a lot, like genuine, authenticity. But I truly believe if you build great relationships, you have a lot of similarities of thought leadership or thoughtfulness and empowerment and empathy, and commonality. Again, what is that one thing that you both have common grounds on?
Mhm.
That's going to be the kind of icebreaker of like, okay, like I feel good. Like you have great energy. I love where you're going. Love what you're doing. Let's continue speaking, talking, emailing, and build that friendship as you move forward.
I'm not mad at you for using the word genuine or authenticity because those are a couple of my favorite words. And I actually was going to bring up the fact that I think a key to networking is being genuine in the reason that you're reaching out, being genuine in the reason that you are trying to have this relationship. Because if you're just doing it to get something, maybe you end up getting it, but I don't feel like that ends up being rewarded in the long run. I think, karma or the universe, whatever you want to call it, rewards you for being genuine and authentic in the reason. And I also think people pick up on it. So to your point, leading the relationship with really getting to know them because you care sets off the tone. Okay, this person's not out just to get something from me, which allows the other individual kind of let their guards down a little bit and be open and build that relationship. So if you're not paying attention to, they say you're the average of the 5 people you surround yourself with. Obviously, your network hopefully is greater than 5 people. It's extremely valuable. And one more thing, I didn't think we'd go into networking, and I didn't give you a heads up that we would, but I feel like this is really important. I'm curious to get your take on this, but one of the things I've realized recently is my network is not only valuable for me and for my clients indirectly, but it's extremely valuable for my kids. And it's really cool because I've built this network of amazing people. An example being a friend of mine in Atlanta. I have another friend in Philly. We all flew to Atlanta. I brought my oldest Roman with me, and he was having dinner with us. And I told him afterwards, I said, now you realize that like the 3 people, your dad included, you had dinner with tonight, like people would love to be at this dinner and hear the business and the things that we were talking about. And here you are, a 13-year-old getting to access to people of this caliber. I hope you realize how important that is. Or knowing a guy that trains professional players that play ball overseas, and now he trains Roman. Like it's really cool to see the network that I genuinely built. Now it has an impact on my kids, and that was kind of like a second level of like how networking is really important.
I think you're full on point. I think I've had those situations as well where I brought my kids to certain meetings, and you know how fortunate they are that they have are able to have a dinner or a coffee meeting with this specific person, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's known for their expertise, right? Or known for, again, an athlete or et cetera. And it's so funny you mentioned that because I like to write, specific marketing tips on LinkedIn. And one of the topics this morning I wrote was the genuineness of how, like, observing kids build relationships in sports
Mm-hmm.
teams. I spoke about that today, of how I see my daughter interact with her soccer team, and really be able to, like, no fear, just, hey, how's it going? Oh, we're playing soccer together, we're on teams. And they just, that genuineness of authenticity of just like building friendships right off the bat and saying, oh, let's go, great score, or great pass. It just really, over the weekend, made me think, wow, like, they, we can learn a lot from our
Mm-hmm.
kids as they build relationships, because there's nothing stopping them, right? They don't know what their other kid's background is. They don't know, they're not stereotyping or anything. They're just like, hey, we're all in this together. Let's play as a team. We're gonna have fun. And that's just like networking as well. It's like you got to give everybody an opportunity to listen to where they're going, what they're doing, and what their journey is, because I'm a big believer of we're in this together as a community, specifically in today's, I would say, challenging times of business,
Hmm.
right? A lot of companies and et cetera, and employees and et cetera. But I do believe the tides will turn where the best companies that have the best executives that will really support people, that will build those relationships and have and be known as one of the better brands as they move forward.
And I think that that conversation about the organizations having opportunity and like leadership, when we spoke, you said something, and I pointed out when we talked, but I really loved it when you said that when you are going to be a CEO, like that was kind of the way you led into. Not like I hope to do it. It was a very confident when I'm CEO of a company. How important is it for you to think that way? And is that a natural way of thinking for you, or is that something you've had to kind of learn to think about the words you mentioned earlier? I wrote it down, powerful and positive words. Have you always been that way, or is that something you've coached yourself? And then I want to learn more about the vision of you being CEO and what that means to you.
I think words are very powerful. Did it naturally happen? Absolutely not. I think we as kids live in everyday lives. As we continue to get older, we fall into specific negative traps. And I think when my aha moment happened is when I had sports injuries, both knees, ACL tears, MCL reconstructing. It gave me realistically that development of positive thinking, the development of manifesting and spending time for yourself and growth. And I think, we don't do it often, and I'm sure there's a lot of people who do it, but I think speaking to yourself positively gives you that kind of daily confidence to say, hey, no matter what challenges I might have, I'm going to accomplish what I can and get to that next stage of my journey. So I'm a big believer, if you can accomplish something each and every day, no matter how small it
Mm-hmm.
is, you're going to see a progression at the end of the week, and you're going to be able to see how much you've grown. You might not see it, but if you look back and be like, oh, wow, I did all these little things, it really eventually got to me doing a bigger project or a bigger thing that I needed to
Mm-hmm.
do. It's powerful. And I do believe that, it's not negative speaking of like to yourself or others doesn't do any good for anybody. So when like you mentioned, I believe I'm a CEO, or when I do have an opportunity to lead another company as I move forward, I know that what I'm going to do, it's going to be with, again, what I call the five C's, right? I'm going to be curious. I'm going to be giving creativity. I want to make sure that everybody is collaborating with one another, and then challenging one another, because we have to challenge each other. And then the fifth C is we need to bring consistency with that, which then I always say it leads to the three R's, right? You're gonna be able to recruit better. You're gonna be able to rally the troops better, and then you're gonna make that repetitive as you move forward. And I think words are super powerful. And like I said, like when we are not transparent as leaders to other people, there's a lack of, I would say, respect for them. That we have to be transparent and communicative to everybody no matter what we
Mm-hmm.
do, from a top position to a specialist position. That communication is so important, because that's going to make that cross-functional teams within a brand so successful as we move forward. And we also have to entrust the people, right? Like when you are communicative, you're going to be able to empower your team, and be able to really see that creativity kind of flourish, because there are certain things that I will say personally, like I will say I'm not the best person to be creative sometimes, but I might have a few
Mm-hmm.
ideas. But I know if you put a lot of people together and kind of whiteboard together and being like, what are the most creative things that we've seen, and how can we implement that, and what does that look like? And and you're going to then start feeling and seeing like this bigger picture, and being like, oh my God, we have a strategy in place. Like things are going to happen. We need to now like execute. And how do we do that? It's just really powerful putting all people together with the empowerment to give creative opportunity for them.
Let's stick on the topic of leadership because it's something you write about and you talk about a lot. Um, we can't say this is the true for all leaders today because there are good leaders and poor leaders, but what are you seeing from your vantage point that leaders today are getting wrong?
Ooh, that's a great question. All right, let's be
Yeah.
transparent. Let's do this. So I believe, and this is just my opinion, I believe that leaders today are still being treated or still being taught to use fear as an advantage. And what I mean by that is, being too vocal or being saying it's my way or the highway, or this is the short-term gain that we need to focus on. Whereas I think that's still being taught, and I believe ego it comes into play as well. Whereas I think versus great leadership, it's all about. It might sound corny, but I always say it's about we, one team, one
Hmm.
dream. Really giving everybody a voice and empowering them and figuring out what is the solution, if there is a solution as we move forward. Being able to really, I think one aspect of something that all leaders need to have is to listen. There's sometimes we won't have answers for it when there's a situation, but what we can do is listen, and sometimes we just that's all that's needed, right? And
Hmm.
be supportive. Um, I also believe again, it's not being authoritative, but it's being conscientious as well as empathetic to what your team is looking for. Now, mind you, you're not going to solve the world or you solve every person's dilemma, but what you can do is like I always say, okay, if that's what you want, like what if I use that word, what if we try this, or what if we did this, or what if you know you're going through this? Like again, you're kind of learning from them and gaining some insights from them of trying to figure out how you can help them through their journey. Again, each person's so different. You can't treat everybody the same way. But I do believe the consistency of what you can help people with being a great leader is by listening. But again, I think that one negative thing is something that hasn't changed, and I will say it's slowly happening. But there are some bad habits I would say to this day that still has been done back in I would say 3 or 4 decades from today. And that's something that I don't know why we still do it, and we as many companies speak about culture and stuff like that, but it's still cultivated, and we need to be better at it.
So whether they are people you've worked under or read about, who are some of the great leaders that you kind of point to as they get it and they do a good job of everything that you just kind of explained?
Oh man, I would say like if it's a not Nike person, but I follow
Hmm.
him, is Hubert Jolly, the ex CEO for Best Buy, and what he did. His belief is what my belief is. It always starts with the people internally. That leads into uplifting them, encouraging them, empowering them. That leads towards the great business. Then that business thrives to become great results in financials,
Hmm.
right? That's what I believe as well. It always starts with the people. I would say internally, Nike, um, you know, there was a lot that I believe were super supportive in my career, and just I can't list them
Very
all,
good.
but there's going to be like Mark Patrick, who's still at Nike to this day. There's Melanie Strong, right? There's Megan Carley. There's Tessa Anagoras. There's so many that I was like, Sandy Bodecker, rest in peace. But like, there are so many that when I built these relationships, I just wanted to learn more about them and genuinely build better friendship and relationship with them. But then me observing how they led really made me think of like that's how I want to lead, and I want to emulate that. And I do believe that like when you have a great team and they see great leadership, they want to emulate what you do as they move forward.
Hmm.
And that's where the progression I believe needs to start happening more and more of.
All right. So one final question on the topic of leadership. You are a father. I am a father, and I always filled the role of a leader just kind of naturally. That's part of who I was, and I really want to instill that in my boys. But also, I realize that they are their own individuals, their own souls, and are going to go on their own path. So I don't know if I can make them be good leaders, but I would love to give them um, qualities or help them become good leaders. How do you plan on helping your kids develop good leadership skills? Because I'm sure you want them to be leaders as well, just given how you view things.
Great question. I think for me, I can't force anything on them, but
Mm-hmm.
what I can do is I'm going to let them fail. I'm literally going to let them fail, meaning like I want them to learn the life lessons that I've learned the hard way because I don't recall whom the basketball coach is, but she coaches in collegiate basketball, but her words were really powerful to me, and that's how I want my kids to learn. Is what she stated was we life doesn't get easier, it gets
Mm-hmm.
harder, and as those hard times happen, we become better at those harder things, and that's what I want my kids to learn. And so one of the challenges I want my kids to learn is to go through those trials and learn from themselves, right?
Mm-hmm.
But to vocalize and communicate with them saying, hey, when I pick them up from school is how was your day? Like, what did you learn today? What was going on today? Like learning and being supportive. Again, that listening aspect is so key because eventually they're going to open up to me with the struggle that they're going
Mm-hmm.
through,
Mm-hmm.
right? Or the pressures that they're going through. And then all I can do is listen and then be able to say, hey, when I have those situations, here's what I've done. And that I truly believe that makes them think. I know they're still young and they're still developing, but the one advice I would say is let them learn. Like we can't force anything on our kids because I would say if we force and always are protecting them, and trust me, I always want to step in and protect them. I really do. But at the same time, my wife and I truly believe that they need to learn and fail and go through the struggles. But we will always be there to be supportive and be able to listen first and then properly give the advice that we can as we move forward. But again, for my kids, I need them to learn the hard way. Like, again, no matter what injuries they go through, to if someone doesn't like them on their team or at school, or if they're going through something, whatever that is, like we need them to go through it and then be ready to be there for them to support them once they're able to, be ready to tell us what they're going through.
That's some great advice. I am way more of a helicopter father than I ever would have imagined. I've gotten better as the boys get older, but I do realize the value in them experiencing and learning on their own. But being there to kind of pick them up a little bit faster and be there to support them as they rebound from it. So I appreciate you sharing that. But I was just, as you were talking, I couldn't help but think about your views on leadership, and surely you have some views of how you want to help your kids. And I know that I was curious, and I'm sure somebody watching and listening has kids that they want to be leaders as well.
I would say that goes the same way with your leader in a
Mm-hmm.
brand. Like, I think too many people are afraid to make mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
Why? Because you might lose what? Some dollars? It could be substantial. I get that too, but you won't know unless you
Mm-hmm.
try. And you got to try because when you hit that one try and it skyrockets to success, you look like a
Mm-hmm.
hero. Your team looks like a hero. But again, it's up to you as a leader to protect your team and reiterate to the upper leadership team, being like, these are the things we're going to do. Now, mind you, there are going to be some bumps and bruises, but be rest assured we're going to learn from them quickly and then move forward to try something else as we move forward because that is what we do. Because if we're not innovative or progressive or scrappy or curious again as a brand, we won't make it. It's the long term gain, not the short term fix. And it's legacy, right? Like that's why I believe a lot
Mm-hmm.
of brands that stop innovating or stop being agile and not look at their legacy, they file for Chapter 11. And
Mm-hmm.
it's unfortunate.
All right, just a quick interruption so I can bring your attention to something that I am very excited about. It's the Keep Pursuing webinar series, and it kicks off May 22nd at 2 o'clock Eastern Standard Time with my good friend Samantha Russell. Now, Samantha's going to be joining me in the first webinar to discuss authenticity and how to bring that to the financial advisors' practice in their marketing and their branding. Ultimately allowing you to tell your story better, tell the story of who you really are and how you really serve your clients, to bring the right clients to you so you have this business that you love and you get to be your true authentic self all of the time. The rest of the series will be announced as time goes on, but they will all be webinars geared towards helping move advisors closer to their authentic practice. Now, you don't have to be a financial advisor to attend. You can replace all of the financial advisor terminology with whatever is relevant to your career, and it will make sense. So while this is for my financial advisor peers, it is open for everybody, and I encourage you, if you're even interested, to sign up and join. Now, how can you sign up? Go to justincastelli.io. You'll get hit with a pop-up. You can sign up for the weekly notes. That's where everything gets dropped first, but then everything else will make its way out to social media. So follow me on Twitter, follow me on LinkedIn. There's already registration out there for it. May 22nd, 2 o'clock Eastern Standard Time with my good friend Samantha Russell kicks off the Keep Pursuing webinar series. There'll be more after that, so stay tuned for more announcements of guests, subjects, and when they will be. All right, let's get back to this great conversation with John. I think that some of the reason we don't take risk is ego. Maybe money's there, maybe money is kind of like that's the scapegoat, but it's really ego. But I also thinking of being a leader in a brand, it depends on whether or not the culture of the company allows you to fail. Like it's career risk as well. So yeah, it's money to the
Of
company, but it could be
course.
money to your family. So you play it more carefully because you know that one miss means you're out. And I think that the benefit of taking these risks, obviously, you alluded to, if succeed, like you look like a rock star. But the other thing is, if you take the risk and you fail, and you realize the world didn't end, your family still loved you, and you get back up and try it again, then like that, then the fear of taking risks in the future becomes a little bit smaller because you know the world doesn't end if it doesn't go perfect, and that's a really valuable lesson as well.
Yeah, I fully agree. Risk is also you need to be communicative. Like again, you need to describe why you're taking these calculated
Hmm.
risks. One of my favorite things is, they say the CFO is never your friend. That person's my best
Hmm.
friend because of the fact that I want to make sure that they understand why we're spending these dollars, um, to be able to showcase the results that we believe we're going to get. Like here are the prior results, and here's why we're going to double down, or here are the results that our competitors have done, and we notice that there's some great learning opportunities, and we want to do the same and see what happens. Right? Again, it's all about communication. It's all about trusting each other, but again, it's all about being agile and being creative as you move forward as a team.
I want to go back on you being a CEO one day, and another thing that really stood out to me. I've seen you write about it before, but also when we talked was the importance of believing in the company that you are working for. Some people that's not necessarily the most important thing. For them at that time of their life, money is the thing that most means the most. But for other people, money is important, but there's other things that have a greater value or very important in decision making. What is it about, getting up every day knowing that the company you're going to work for, you believe in the culture, you believe in the message? Like, why is that so important to you?
Yeah, I mean, for me, what gets me up, why I'm excited, I wake up at 5:30 every morning, and what my brain starts thinking is, I'm sure you've heard of it. It's common. Simon Sinek talks about it, but it's our why,
Hmm.
right? Like, why are we doing what we do? And for me, I get excited about branding or personal branding because it's a story to tell.
Hmm.
Like, I think again, I think a product is a product. It's great and it's innovative and it's performance, which I get, but it's the emotional connection of telling that story, right? Being like, or even your personal perspective, like you're sharing a purpose and reason of the existence of whom you are within your story,
Hmm.
right? You're telling how different you are, why the things you believe are that you believe in, like the moral of the why. Again, like bringing this storytelling to let others understand that this is whom you are and why you do it, but also like there are other people who once they hear it, they relate because they're like, I'm going through the same thing. I'm going through that same exact journey,
Hmm.
or that brand is doing the exact same thing that I believe in. Because I think every brand, if they explain, their mission, vision, and position of whom they are as a brand, um, that's really important, not just internally to an employee, but externally as a consumer. I mean, let's talk about Nike, a great example again. It's the voice of the athlete. And the reason why they developed Nike was they listened to Phil Knight and the team listened to the athletes of cross like running and being able to develop an
Hmm.
amazing shoe that solves their problems and being able to do it with a waffle iron and etc. And as they continue gradually learning their stories, they're able to implement, you know, the innovation into their products to tell through their lens, through the Nike lens as well, the story of the shoe and why they're doing it for that athlete, right? And then other people, when they watch it, they're like, yeah, I want that shoe because I have that same issue. That solves my
Hmm.
problem. Oh, but it also looks good, feels good, lasts long, whatever that may be. But then the word of mouth starts going around, and then that brand is thriving at that point. And I think you're seeing it now with other brands. Like if we're talking about sports brands, it's like On Running, Hoka. You're looking at, Solomon from an outdoors perspective. I think Columbia Sportswear does it well. I think Keen Footwear is coming up and coming as well. But even fashion, right? Like fashion and collaborations, Dior, Hermes bags, Louis Vuitton. I mean, they're all telling a
Hmm.
story now. Whereas some weren't doing that, and now they're learning, oh, like we need to tell an powerful, like a very emotional connection to the consumer of telling the story. And I think um, personal brands the same way as we move forward.
I'm gonna get to personal brand in a second. That's a perfect segue. Like you're leading me on this conversation exactly where I wanted to go. But I can't. It's driving me crazy. I can't remember. I don't know if you ever listened to the Founders podcast, but David Senra talks about one founder, and it was a woman. I don't know if it's Coco Chanel or somebody along those lines, and she said that like you're selling the story. And think about the Hermes bags and how much people pay for those. It's like it's not the. It has good quality, but it's not at the price point of what it is. It's a story. It's a brand. It means something to people, and that's why they pay that dollar amount, not because of the quality of the leather that's used or the stitching or whatever it might be. So the story is really important. And since most of us don't have businesses that we're running or starting, but we do have a personal brand, I'm a big believer that we all have a personal brand. Just not all of us realize it or use it. How important is it for individuals to consider what their personal brand might be and use that to their advantage? And what would that mean? I guess what would that when I say use that to their advantage, what does that mean to you?
Yeah, I mean, having a personal brand today, I would say, is so important. No matter if you're just starting your career to, if even if you're like 60 plus years old, personal brand is so important to this day because we know we live in a digital age. We still do, and it's ever evolving, and it's easier to share whom you are, what you do, and how you do things. It can be manipulated for sure, but like the genuine, I would say, way of personal branding is, um, you know, again, I would lead it back to art and science. There are people who are very artistic, theatrical, and they cut and paste and make their content very good of whom they are, right? Or whom they think they want other people to think. And then there are people who organically want to showcase their feelings, like just get your iPhone and record and post, right? And those two avenues are the same thing. You're expressing whom you are and what you like, what you dislike. Um, and that's your personal branding. I would give like a great example is like Keith Lee, the food critic, right? Organically, he's huge on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, etc. But he's a consumer that just loved eating food and he wanted to rate
Hmm.
it. And there's no theatrics, it's all organic, but people know him as a food critic. And wherever he goes, the next day that brand is so bombarded with customers because how he rates it and he's
Hmm.
authentic. It's amazing. But that's his personal brand, right? That's how he showcases who he is and why he loves doing things. And then again, there are people who cut and paste and theatrically want to do certain things the way they do it, but they do it well as well. And so I think no matter if it's art and science or organic, like personal branding is important more than ever. I would even say even through LinkedIn now, if people aren't expressing their beliefs, the knowledge that they have, or even at a high level, like how they feel on LinkedIn, um, people won't know whom they are. And if you're able to do those things and be able to showcase why you're passionate about the topics that you speak about, um, people will know whom your personal brand is. And I think today, because of there's so many, I would say, jobs out there or people applying for jobs, this is just one avenue for you to showcase who you are. Because I would say when you're interviewing, it's very difficult sometimes to showcase your persona or
Hmm.
your actual genuineness. But if you're able to showcase the content, I think it's easier for them to understand whom you are and then be able to have that conversation as you interview or as you're trying to sell something, if you're an entrepreneur or if you work for a sales brand or whatever. It's just easier. And I think that's why it's important to have a personal brand as you move forward.
Yeah, and I mean, I know we live in a digital age, but you really have a personal brand even if you're not on social media. Like to me, your personal brand is it's really just a reputation. It's what you're known for. So whether that's your professional expertise or just who you are as an individual, and we have the ability to control that narrative. And this is where I think the idea of the authentic life and living authentically is so important, that if you're going to be mindful of what it is you put out to let people know who you are, you want to make sure that it's authentic for a couple reasons. You want to make sure that the people, when they see you in person, you match who they saw online. But also, it's exhausting to have a personal brand that is not you. Like you're faking this personal brand. It's exhausting and it's not going to last. So I think it's really important to really know who you are as you set out to build this personal brand, because to your point, having a personal brand, it can be an advantage for you. And you may not even get the opportunity to sit down with the interviewer, but if they go pull up your LinkedIn and they see you showing your expertise and showing your personality, that may be the thing that gets you past the front door and in for the interview. And if you don't showcase that, then you miss that opportunity.
And I totally agree with you. I think even in a digital age, I think your reputation is very important as well, right? Like I always ask people, what do you want your legacy to be? What do you want to be known
Mm-hmm.
for, right? If you don't have social media, and I know you're connected with this person, and I don't know whom you are, I'm gonna call them and be like, who are they? What are they like? Like, are they creative? Are they personal? Are they dry or whatever? It gives you like understanding of what they perceive of
Mm-hmm.
you, right? And so I think if I ask people when I interview them, I always ask them, is like, if you had if I called someone, what is that one word they're going to explain of whom you are,
Mm-hmm.
right? Are you dedicated, empathetic, leader, whatever that may be, right? Like your personal persona as well as your legacy in your personal brand is going to be important as well, and how you treat others specifically.
If you're willing to share, what do you want your legacy to be?
Ooh. I would like my legacy. That's a great question. Let me put this out there first. By no means is this finalized because I continue to evolve as I
Mm-hmm.
grow, but I would like to be known for as a person who's there for others, to be supportive, um, challenge them, to be really empathetic, but to be known as a leader that really understood everybody and give everybody an opportunity or a shot to
Mm-hmm.
excel and be better. Um, I don't need the flashy stuff, like the title or anything. I mean, it's great if I'm in that role, great. But I don't. I will never say it's my team. I say we as a
Mm-hmm.
team believe that we move forward with this. And so, again, I continue to evolve. But we, in my circle, my community, even my relationships, I want to be known as that person that is is always willing to help, no matter what we can do. And I might not be able to help, but I'm going to be there and sure
Mm-hmm.
try, or connect you to someone that I might know um, that you need to be connected with. So yeah.
I love that the legacy is a legacy of a server's mindset, not necessarily, accolades and all these other things. It's about helping others and putting others first. So I think that's a great legacy. And I'm not surprised that it's along those lines, just given our conversations. Um, I do want to have a little bit of fun in like the last maybe 5-10 minutes. I couldn't have you on and not have a chance to pick your brain and get your thoughts on what Adidas is doing with Anthony Edwards. From a non, I have no technical brand training or marketing. I love it. I know good when I see good. I've always appreciated it. I think what they are doing is phenomenal. Now it helps that he's dominating on the court, so I want to get your feedback on that. And then in that feedback, there's obviously a lot of comparisons between him and Michael Jordan right now. Like even people modifying pictures. Like I saw a comparison of his dunk last night on KD to a dunk Jordan did against the Suns, and it was like the same crossover, same lean. But Howard was a part of Jordan coming to Nike. Like, do you see are the parallels between Anthony Edwards and what he's doing and what Adidas is doing similar to Nike back in the day? that was a lot of questions in there. So I want to get your feedback on what Adidas and Edwards are doing.
First and foremost, I think they are doing it the right way. They are. First, they got their superstar, AE, Anthony Edwards. I mean, it helps that he's playing well, like you said. But I think they're doing, kudos to that team that revamped the entire basketball platform, specifically behind him, as well as, Donovan Mitchell, Trey Young, et cetera. Their whole basketball platform is really evolving. And I would
Mhm.
say they're doing things that, yeah, Nike did with MJ back in the days. They're defining their purpose, right? They're figuring out what their ethos is, right? They're expressing and educating on whom Anthony Edwards is, but also they're expressing and educating what the product is and what they're creating in his shoe,
Mhm.
right? The high and the low. They're bringing that emotional connection with their ads now, which is amazing, right?
Mhm.
Like, I think their most recent ad with the AE low that came out during the playoffs, just both him and another person in a car and really just saying like, this is what we love, like that is
Mhm.
brilliant, right? And then you're building that kind of like that connection, but that brand authenticity, right? Like that's leading like people to be excited about the AE shoe, and they're prepared to continue to create and amplify AE's product. But again, they're doing it as a team, right? It's not just
Mhm.
AE, but it's AE, Dame Lillard, Donovan Mitchell, Trey Young, and it's just so aligned perfectly. And they're doing it the right way. They're definitely gaining some momentum. I would say as long as AE continues to play well and they go into the playoffs, like I already know, I guarantee it, they already have something ready. No matter what results
Mhm.
happen for AE and the Timberwolves, so they'll have something for sure if they get out of the playoffs
Mhm.
early, but they definitely will have something for sure if they go to the finals and win the NBA
Mhm.
championship,
Mhm.
right? But they're just doing it the right way. I mean, again, it helps when your athlete is involved in the community. Yeah, he's human, so he's going to have his ups and downs. But I think kudos to the leadership team to really like educate AE, and I'm sure his crew too is like just saying, hey, you're now people that look up to you,
Mhm.
watch your every move, and this is going to be a big, you know, opportunity for you to continue growing. Again, I think Damian Lillard is a great example too. Like he is really well known in the community. His shoe sells well. He's part of the Three Stripes. Um, as a Blazer in Oregon, that he was his tenure here, he's very still heavily involved in the community that I know of, and that again leads into legacy, right? So, long story short, yes, they're doing amazing things. I think they're building his legacy, which is the smart way to do it. Again, they're looking
Mhm.
at the long term gain versus like the quick, oh, here's a shoe, slap on some music and some creative, and we're good. No, no, no. They're like they have a strategy in place
Mhm.
now. So their strategy this year is amazing, and I expect that continuation of those strategies happening for many years to come as they move forward.
Yeah, I love the commercial and the convertible, and I don't know how many people like made the connection that when they start talking about the low top, they drop the top on the convertible, which would be like going from the mid to the low, and everything
Exactly.
about that, like the color, the old car that they picked, like it's just so much. Like again, I could, I don't have the skill set. I never tried to make a campaign like that, but I know enough to appreciate how good of a campaign that is. And then he just has that charisma that just like fuels it even more. Like in the press conferences, and he's always had it. Like that's what's really cool is like you look at interviews when he came in. I think on draft night he was being interviewed, and he was talking about how he could be a professional baseball player if he wanted to. Like he just has this charisma that comes across as not arrogant, but it's so good, and Adidas is living that up.
I think it's
Yeah.
confidence, right? Like he has that confidence in himself, and he's moving forward with it. He believes in it, and I think you're right. I think one of the things again they're really focusing on is building his legacy, which is amazing to see, right? Like they're not afraid to take the risk that they need to. I think they're definitely kind of
Mhm.
I would say reorging the way they do things a little bit, right? They still have originals that they need to fix and the other avenues of the sports. But like basketball right now, I would say is just has a lot of momentum, man. Like
Mhm.
they're doing really well. Like you said, like as a consumer, you notice those
Mhm.
things, right? And so like that just proves a point that they're doing it right. And like I heard it on I think Complex's interview recently, but someone mentioned if you do the 50-yard look or lookout, meaning like if you're at 50 yards away from a field or a basketball court, you'll know that shoe. You'll just notice it, what kind of shoe it is. And if that happens and you know what shoe it is, then you know that your brand is working from a
Hmm.
product
Hmm.
innovation, performance, and then athlete as you move forward. So it's really interesting to see what they're doing and what will come next for them. But I'm excited to see it.
I could nerd out on this with y'all. This could have been a whole episode just nerding out on Adidas and going from there. The final comment on that is I will say you mentioned them taking risks, and they did take risks on. I think the design of the AE shoe was a risk, and it turned out great. And I also think that like I think the Hardens look really good. Like what I like, I
Yeah.
like the style of the shoe they're putting out because they look good. Like I was the type of player that I would want to look good on the court as well. Like I wanted to play better, but I wanted to look good while I played good. Which is why I always wore Jordans because those were the best looking shoes. Like maybe it's because I'm old and I'm nostalgic, but like the first 11 or 12 Jordans were hands down the best. And then, in my opinion, they kind of started to go down. Um, but so like I really love the risk they're taking with the style because it could have gone south and it could have been a bum. And I think that so they're taking some of that success they found in the Hardens and the AE. And I think Damian Lillard's shoe looks better than any of his shoes have ever looked this year. So I think that their design they've figured out too. And I don't know if they stole a little bit of that Yeezy magic and took some Kanye designs and kept those back or what they did, but the design is definitely standing out a lot. So, anyways, we're gonna lose listeners nerding out on this because there's probably only a couple people out there who care like you and I do, but it was fun.
No, for sure. I think you nailed it. I think that the key three things that Adidas is doing right now is it's all about performance, look, and then the third, I would say, vision that they're looking at holistically is how do we add that performance and look into beyond just the on-court
Hmm.
and also
Hmm.
lifestyle. And they figured it
Hmm.
out, and they definitely figured it out. And I expect them to continue moving forward with that avenue. But I also expect Nike to come up with something innovative as well for their franchise players like Giannis, LeBron. I think even LeBron's most recent shoe, I think that's the best one yet
Hmm.
since I've seen every rendition. But they'll come up, and you're going to see other brands kind of popping up again. I think New Balance is like thriving. I think Converse is going to come up, with Gilius, and then again, there's Anta with
Hmm.
Kyrie. I mean, it's just brands are just leveling up, and it's going to be really interesting um, who does what
Hmm.
next. That's what I'm excited about because right now, you're right. Adidas is the one that's thriving right now in the NBA
Hmm.
Finals.
Well, again, I can keep us going on shoes. I'm not going to go into Anta and all the other ones, but I'm going to bring us back to the main point of the conversation of the your journey at Nike and highlighting that, but the conversation about leadership and branding and the importance behind that. Is there anything that maybe we left unsaid that you'd want to close with?
I would say, again, no matter what brand you're working for, again, if you follow the 5 C's and you're really, really passionate, I would say, or your belief in the brand and telling an authentic, great story, it will
Hmm.
show because consumers are not stupid. They're very savvy, and they'll make a decision for you in the less than 5 seconds if they think your brand is awesome or if they think your brand is whatever, right? And I would say from a personal perspective, if you're in marketing or whatever avenue you are in your business, don't let I would say don't let the brand you work for and if you decide to move on be your sole identity. I think I won't say
Hmm.
your sole identity. I would say think of it as it gave you the step to move to the next role no matter what. Because again, I think people don't realize I went from from a footwear apparel company to consulting for footwear apparel companies to then going on actually a consumer's goods company.
Hmm.
That I don't have that experience in hard goods, but what I did do was the things that I learned from Nike and consulting is that listen to the consumer, build some structure within a brand company or brand strategy. How are you going to focus on omni-channel, et cetera, and then execute and make sure the team is thriving with that execution and be agile as you move
Hmm.
forward. And that's why I believe that a lot of the successes that I'll say I had with the amazing team that I
Hmm.
had, we accomplished a lot of great things. And I think people don't let others tell you differently. Just believe in what you did, and if you're going for a role that's completely different than what you were doing, just show, just prove to them that you're capable of doing the job, no matter if you're not in an apparel footwear company, if you're going for one or others. But I think if you show them that you're, again, you understand the purpose, the mission, vision, you're ready to educate, you're ready to utilize those 5 C's, brand identity, you understand the consumer. That's what's going to make a company or a brand successful.
All good advice to end on. So, people want to follow you. Where should I direct them to in the show notes? Link to LinkedIn, to your podcast. Where should I send them to?
Yeah, podcasts. My co-host and I haven't done it for a while, but I would say podcasts if they want to learn about Nike and the ex Nike leadership that we interviewed. Great, but I put a lot of my own content and context through LinkedIn, and that's the best avenue. I truly believe that is a awesome platform to just be yourself, educate, listen, speak your mind in regards to topics of business, marketing, etc. But it's a great platform, and I use that the most.
All right. Well, I will link to that. Well, John, I want to thank you for taking some time out of your day to share your story and your wisdom with us. It all very much aligns with what the authentic life is about. So I appreciate you sharing that, and looking forward to following your journey as you make your way towards leading that next company and wherever that may be. I'm excited to see what happens.
No, I appreciate it, Justin. Like I said, thank you to Grace for connecting us, and I know that we'll continue to touch base and talk great stories and be able to learn from one another. So, and I think what you're doing is amazing in regards to just upliftment, educating people to share your story as well as others. So, thank you.